What is revealed?
Okay. Good morning as we go to the class, the portion of the week, this beautiful new class. I hope you have the book, Torah Studies. It's going to be this color. And that's what the classes are going to be for the next couple of months as we go through the book of Exodus. We're holding the third portion of the week, which is Pashas Boy. And this week's Pasha, we are given the first mitzvah in the Torah. It's fascinating that we started actually the first Rashi, which we mentioned. We're going to mention it again today. The first Rashi, you have a book? Take one. You better do something to use it and look at the table. So give me back the book if you finish. No, but it's important. You can have the book, so don't leave it here. So you can use it next week again. So we have the first Rashi in the Torah, in the book of Genesis, says that if you remember that first Rashi, mentioned a couple times through different classes, that Rashi says that the Torah should have started with this week's portion, Parshas Boy. The Torah should have started with a portion of Boy, because we actually have the first mitzvah in the Torah that God gave the Jewish people is written in this week's Parsha. So what is the first mitzvah in the Torah? What is the first? Most of us think the first mitzvah of the Torah is I am God, your God. But actually, the Jewish people were given a mitzvah this week that is considered the first mitzvah in the Torah. And you find it's one verse, which is extremely, this mitzvah the Torah gives us is a very, very hard mitzvah, not a hard mitzvah to do, but a hard mitzvah to figure out, as you'll soon see in a moment. And this is the mitzvah, ready? This is the verse in the Torah, text number 1a. It's in your book, page 3. And God said to Moshe now in the land of Egypt, this month, the month of Nisan, coming up month, the month of Nisan, shall be to you as the head of the month. It shall be to you the first of the months of the years. So, as we know in the Hebrew calendar, Jewish calendar, we count to the months. That started off in Mitzrayim, that we go to the months. We go to the moon, not to the sun. So by Jews, we use both. We use the moon calendar and the sun calendar. We use the sun calendar for the holidays, right? The Torah says, for example, the Passover should always be in the spring. Sukkot should always be in the fall. And the Shavuos in the summer. So we go according to the sun in certain things in the Torah. And that's why, like this year, for example, we have to add another month to make sure that Pesach is in the spring. Because if we would not add a month, so Pesach would be closer to the winter. We would still be in the winter when the Pesach would come. So we always have to make sure that Pesach is in the spring. And since as Jews, we go to the Levana, to the moon, the moon is always missing 11 days a year. It's always missing around 11 days every year in the calendar. So in 3 years, it's missing 30 days. So every 3 years, we have to add another month to the moon calendar, and that's why we have a leap year this year. Now, the moon calendar, to understand the moon calendar, is not an easy thing, because the moon calendar has 29.5 days in the calendar. So that's why by us in the Hebrew calendar, there's either 29 or 30 days. There's no 28 days like in the secular calendar. Can we have 28 days? Okay, there's no such thing as 31 days. It's either 29 days, is it a new book? You have to take the book if you want to follow that. Oh, yeah. It's either 29 days or 30 days. So, for example, today is the 4th day of Shvat. So the month of Tevis had 29 days. And then after 29 days was the Chodesh Shvat. If the calendar has 30 days, so there was one day that's Chodesh. So that's why this month there was one day that's Chodesh. It was only on Monday. It was Chodesh Shvat. If the calendar has 30 days, then there'll be 2 days of Chodesh. The 30th day of the previous month would be the first day of Rosh Chodesh, and the first day of the present month would be the second day of Rosh Chodesh. That's the way it goes. If it's 30 days, then there's 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. If it's 29 days, there's 1 day of Rosh Chodesh. Now, in the times of the temple, how did they establish this? How did they establish this fact? So it was established on 2 ways. It was established through witnesses who saw the birth of the moon, and it was established through calculation. The sages, the Sanhedrin, would calculate the moon, because we all know today we don't go according to the site of the people. Don't do that anymore, to the site of the moon. Hillel, the great sage, not Hillel, the one we always talk about, but Hillel the second, so to say, his third Hillel of his great grandson, the 4th century, I think it was, established a calendar. Established a calendar that can go forever. And we go according to that calendar that Hillel established, and we figure out the year. It's already figured out already, in essence. He figured out through his calculation how we establish the months forever. Now, there are certain months that have 30 days. There are certain months that fluctuate. And there are certain months that only have 29 days. And you have to know, I don't know the calculation. It's very hard calculation. It's a very deep calculation. It's extremely, you can open up the Rambam Maimonides. He has a whole chapter, Kiddush HaChodesh, the sanctification of the moon, and how he calculates the month. It's extremely difficult, extremely difficult. But it was done through a calculation, as I said, that we go according to the calculation now of Hillel, and he calculated how to establish the months, and we go to that calculation. We don't go anymore to the way to somebody looking up witnesses establishing the birth of the moon by their sight. Now, it was very difficult in times of the sages, in times of the Gemara, not times of the Gemara, in times of the Beis Hamikdash, that they had to go to both calculations. They had to go to cite witnesses that came to the Beis Hamikdash, came to the court and said they saw the moon exactly being born at this time. And they went to go according to their calculation. So that's why really today we don't have no problems. We all accepted Hillel's calculation, and we go according to the way Hillel established it. And that's it. But in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, where you had to have witnesses, so now we can have a problem. There can be some difficulties, right? Because who said we have to wait for the witnesses? They don't come on the 29th day. They come on the 30th day, right? So let's say the witnesses, come on the 30th day. It's late already. It's so what would so really we went according to the court. We went according to the court's calculation. Ultimately, the court's calculation was very important. So if the witnesses would not arrive, the court would never pass 30 days. Right? Court would never pass 30 days. You with me, people? It means if nobody would show up the 29th day, the 30th day would be Rosh Chodesh. Irrelevant. If anybody showed up, they would never pass 30 days. Right? The Hebrew calendar never passed 30 days. But they could make a mistake in the 29 days. Right? They could make a mistake. Let's say what happens, the court established the Chodesh on the 29th day, right? Through their calculations. And then the witnesses would come, they would mistake. Let's say hypothetical, that the court would make a mistake. And they would establish Chodesh on the 29th day, and then people would know that they made a mistake. There's no moon, people are looking out. So this became a difficulty. Therefore, the Torah, in essence, establishes that once the court establishes the date, that's the date of Rosh Chodesh. Now, this is very important. This is not something, oh, who cares when they establish the Chodesh? Who cares when the date is? Who really cares? It makes a big difference when Pesach comes out and when Sukkot comes out and when Shavuos comes out. So the establishing of the date of the month changes the date of the holiday. Right? So this was an important thing to the Jewish people. Shabbos is always the same day, the seventh day of the week is Shabbos. So it doesn't make any difference what situation you're in. Shabbos is Shabbos, whether you're ready or not. But can you imagine if suddenly they would add another month? Came the month of Adar, and they would add another month to Adar. Here, here you're ready for Pesach. In a month, now you have 2 months. Well, you thought it was 2 months, and the court decided it's going to be 1 month. So this was again, today we don't have these issues because we know the calendar for the next hundreds and hundreds of years. We know exactly when Pesach is going to be. I can prove, because we go according to Hillel's calculation. But in the times we're talking the times of Beis Hamikdash, this became a problematic thing. It was extremely, we had to know when the court, and that's why the whole Yontif Sheni Shel Galus, the second day holiday of the Jewish, those that out of Israel came into being. Because how would the whole Israel know when the Bezdin established the month? The Bezdin wasn't Yerushalayim. There was no WhatsApp and emails in those days. How would the person in Tzfas know when the sanctification of the month was? Because that would change when Pesach would be. So there was a whole thing of lighting fires on roofs, on top of mountains. There's a whole system set up. It was not so simple. And then the question was, how would Syria know? The Jews who lived out of Israel, they lived time of the Second Temple. They lived in Syria, they lived in Syria. How would they know? They would send Pony Express. Well, what happens if the guy came late? No, because the Bezdin had to establish the month. The Sanhedrin had to establish the month. So now the Sanhedrin is sitting in Jerusalem. How did when the Sanhedrin established the month, how did they tell the rest of the Jews? This was problematic, and that's why out of Israel they established 2 days. That's why they established 2-day holiday. That's where it came about. Yontif Sheni Shel Galus. The second day they decided to forget it. But they're always going to establish 2 days. Like this, it won't be 1 day. In Israel, they can know at the day. But out of Israel, we don't know. We might be late. So therefore, we're going to establish 2 days Yontif. And that's what we do out of Israel till today. So even though today everybody goes according to the calendar, whether you're in Israel or out of Israel, but once the sages in the Talmud, or it was actually a sage in the Second Temple, Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, the sage of the Second Temple, established 2 days holiday out of Israel, we do that until today. But that's why they established 2-day holiday out of Israel. Yeah, you with me? This is a complicated issue, and the funny thing is that the first mitzvah Torah starts off with a complicated mitzvah, a very extremely complicated mitzvah.
It makes them think, and it forces people to calculate. So
Right. So it's interesting. We're going to learn a great lesson. That Eva's going to learn a great lesson from this mitzvah. That we start off all the mitzvahs in the Torah from this mitzvah, the mitzvah of the sanctification of the moon. You would think the first mitzvah should be I'm God, your God. The first mitzvah should be, I don't know, biggie mitzvah. I don't know. The first Passover. No. The first mitzvah Torah that God gives the Jewish nation is the sanctification of the moon. Interesting mitzvah to pick. Out of all the mitzvahs in the Torah, to pick that mitzvah. So there has to be a lesson, and this is what's going to be the lesson. That's really the point. Okay? Amalek, God said to him, when the moon renews itself, you will have a new month. God told Moshe the first mitzvah that the concept of the blessing of the moon, which we do every month. We go out and bless the moon. Kiddush HaChodesh, sanctification of the moon. So we do that symbolically. every month between the 7th of the month and the 15th of the month. We go out as Jews and we go and we look at the moon and we make a bracha. We make a blessing over the sanctification of the moon, right? Moses struggled to determine the precise moment of the renewal of the moon. It's very difficult. To calculate the moon is very difficult. As I said, you can go read the Rambam and you'll tell me if you understand what he's talking about. You simply have to be an astronomer. You have to be an astronomer and a great mathematician. Right? So the Gemara, there's a great sage, Gamliel, who was a son of Rabbi Hillel, said the exact number. It's 29 point, that's like 29, it's like 50 numbers after the 29, right? Whatever, I don't know. And it's like a long number. And they said, we once gave a class on this, and NASA also came with a number of the moon, and they have the exact same number. The only difference is the last number that I think Rabbi Gamliel is a 1 and the NASA is a 0, and that's it. So Rabbi Gamliel, who didn't have all the computers of NASA, it comes out almost exactly the same as NASA with all its technology. It's a very difficult number. So Moshe Rabbeinu had the same struggle. Said God said to him, okay, this is the way it is. So the Abishah showed him the number. They asked actually the Gemara in the Talmud, they asked the sage, how do you know the number? He said, oh, the number has been given to me by Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu gave the number. I'm telling you Moshe Rabbeinu's number. I was given over from rabbi to rabbi what that number is. And I'm telling you God's number that God gave Moshe Rabbeinu, the exact number, 29 dot, whatever the number is. You can look it up. So, at the size it appears before.
But Rabbi, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So this.
Let me ask you the question. The numbers.
No. This mitzvah, which technically you're saying is the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people, do you mean specifically when they became a people? Because the first mitzvah is Peruve Ravu.
No, that was to the world. The
Jews.
Jewish people. The first mitzvah that was given to the Jewish people as a nation was this.
So, like Peruve Ravu, is that to all the people?
That's the humanity that was given
humanity.
To
okay. Oh, so all the mitzvahs.
Ultimately, the first
prior to this, the mitzvahs all prior to this was to all humanity.
Correct, and to the Jews also. But here is the first mitzvah as a nation, a Jewish nation, which Rashi says, as I said in the beginning of the class, Rashi says the Torah should have really started off with this verse. The Torah is the book of laws. The Torah should have started off with this verse. That's where we should have started off the whole Torah. Skip the whole Genesis, the whole beginning of Exodus. It's not important. It's a story, seemingly. The story of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Here is what the Torah was given for. Torah was given for a book of laws. And here is the first law that was given to the Jewish nation. Bingo, start the Torah right over here. So God showed him with his finger. That's why it says Zeh. If you look at the Torah uses the word HaChodesh HaZeh. When it says the word Zeh, it means that something was showing. Zeh. We find this later also in many times in the Torah. When it comes to kashrus, it says Zeh. This is the animal. So Rashi over there also says when it says Zeh, it means Moshe Rabbeinu showed them the animal. This is a kosher animal. This is not a kosher animal. Showed them each and every animal and fish and bird in existence. Yes.
What was the exact moment that we became?
Now.
No, but was it because that passed over?
No. They're going out of Egypt. The Abraham of Ata B'chartanu. When we say God shows the Jewish nation, is the time of going out of Egypt.
Because I've heard from another rabbi.
I don't know exactly what the time is. I don't know. Moses, Pharaoh called the Jewish people the Jewish nation. So really, the one who coined the Jewish nation as a nation was Pharaoh. Was not. But ultimately, the Jewish nation became a nation that they went out on their legions. Is going out of Mitzrayim. It's going out of Mitzrayim, and ultimately uniting the Jewish nation was Mount Sinai, where they were united as one nation. But they went out as a nation. But that's not the point of this class. The point over here is the first mitzvah. So he showed him with a finger the moon in the sky and said to him, you must see the moon like this and sanctify the month. So this was as I said, this is a mitzvah of the Torah of Kiddush HaChodesh, which ultimately was established as the text number 2 is Bezdin, the high court. So here the Maimonides explains the way it was done in Jewish law. The high court would make a calculation in a manner resembling the calculation of astronomers. So that the high court would make this calculation, which the Rambam does. It's very, as I said, I can't emphasize it's a very hard calculation, but these were great sages. And you only were allowed on the high court if you were an astronomer. First, you only allowed on the high court if you know all the 7 languages. You're only allowed in the high court if you were an astronomer, if you were a mathematician. You needed to know all these things. Who know the location of the stars and their paths in the orbit. So they knew this. These great sages in the Sanhedrin were great astronomers and astrologers, and I don't know what astronomers. And they knew the movement of the stars and the moon. They would perform careful research to determine whether or not they would be able to sight the moon at an appropriate time on the 30th at night. They would know exactly what time the moon is. You know, my friends, we 2 weeks ago, we do it. We announced it on Shabbos Mevarchim. This past Shabbos was called Shabbos Mevarchim because we blessed a new month. If you listen, we pick up the Torah. We're symbolizing a court. That's how we pick up the Chazan picks up the Torah. He is symbolic of the court. And if you remember, before the Chazan sanctifies the month, whoever, I'm usually one who does it, I announce the birth of the month. And I say the time of day, and chalakim. I say the chalakim. That's not seconds. That is to the minutes and to its seconds and to its chalakim. So we say exactly, which is, again, now the Hillel calculated exactly at what time at 2:52 a.m. and 7 chalakim, which is not seconds, is even more, chalakim is even more defined than even seconds, the moon is going to be born. So it's exact the calculation. In the times of the Sanhedrin, they would do that every month. If the judges determined that it was possible to sight the moon, they would sit, wait, and then they would calculate. They would know the calculation exactly. And then, but they had to have the second component that the Torah says, and that is the witnesses. So they had to wait for the witnesses to come, right? So they knew already when the birth of the moon was. But nevertheless, the Torah says you need to have witnesses. So they waited for the witnesses, right? They had everything figured out through astronomy and through number. But then they waited for the schlepper witnesses, or whoever they were, a bunch of who knows who, a bunch of those guys who looked up to the sky, and bingo, they became witnesses, right? They would wait for witnesses to come and testify. Throughout the entire, so they would wait the whole 30th day, they would wait. 29th day, the 3rd, they would wait. If they figured out to be the 30th, the witnesses come at 29th, the Messiah would rip them apart because they said it's not possible. But if they waited a whole 30th day, if the witnesses came, the court examined their testimony according to the law and verified the truth of their statements. The court would sanctify the new month. If the moon was not sighted and the witnesses not come, whatever, it was a cloudy day, they would complete the 30th day and make the full month, thus making a full month. They would say anyway, as I said before, there's no 31 days in the Hebrew calendar. It's not possible. It's impossible. So if they waited a whole 30th day and nobody came, they made the 30th day, and that's it. It's done. So if, according to their calculations, the judges knew that it's impossible for the moon to be sighted, they would not sit in session on the 30th day. They would say, forget it. We're not going to even wait for the witness, because even witnesses that come and say they saw it, that's not saying the right thing. I know what they're saying. They must be dreaming. Nor would they wait for the arrival of witnesses. If the witnesses came, they would know that they are false witnesses, or that clouds appeared to them in a form resembling a moon, but it was not the real moon. And therefore, it was basically a waste of time. So really, this was a problem, because you think the witnesses didn't know that the rabbis knew already when the moon was already calculated. So why would the witnesses come? Right? Why in the world would the witnesses come? So the witnesses, how do you bring Jews to come? You're going to feed them. That's it. So therefore, they said, listen, there was an announcement. On the 29th and the 30th day, there's going to be a big smorgasbord in Yerushalayim. Humongous smorgasbord. All you can eat. Right? All you can eat. As long as you come and say testimony, as long as you are going to come to say testimony, you're going to have a free smorgasbord. That's it. And that's what they did. So the Mishnah says there was a large courtyard in Yerushalayim that was called Beit Yitzchak, Beit Ezek, Beit Yazek. All the witnesses coming to testify about the new moon were gathered there, and the court would examine them there. They prepared a great feast for them, so that people will be willing to come. That's it. Give them food, they'll come. Finished, right? Because we want to do it. We want to do what the Eivishter wanted to do, right? Because we want witnesses to come. We want them to come, even though they might be proven false witness. Doesn't make a difference. Let them come. The pairs of witnesses that arrived first, were examined first. They would bring the greater of the two to say to them, tell us, how do you see the moon? Was it in front of the sun, behind the sun, to the north, south? How high was the moon over the horizon? Which direction did it tilt? How wide was it? Then they would bring in his counterpart, examine him. If the statement matched, the testimony was accepted. If not, they'll say, go, get goodness and take, go continue eating. We'll continue, we'll take in the second pair. Then they would ask the other pairs of witnesses a certain general question, not because they needed, let's say they corroborated, so they had the testimony ready. They don't want to make all the other witnesses feel bad, so they'll continue bringing the witnesses, right? You didn't come for nothing. You didn't only come for the food. So then they'll say, walk out and say, okay, we have witnesses, smorgasbord's closed. Basically, everybody go home. We have our witness. No, they would make believe like they didn't get the witnesses. They would call each one in. And even though they established it already with the first testimony, they would go through all the witnesses. They make sure everybody feels good that they came not to eat. They came to say testimony on the new month. Right? And that's what they did. But so the witness should not leave disappointed. And so they would be accustomed to come, right? They wanted to come next month too. Right? We want to make sure witnesses come every month. Then the court would say, then, after they said, okay, guys, thank you all for coming. We've established this according to all your testimony. You're wonderful. Thank you for coming. I hope you had a good, don't forget to bench after eating. I hope you enjoyed the meal. Have a good Chodesh. The court sanctified the month. Kiddush HaChodesh. So in essence, there was three things. The court calculated, the court took witnesses, and the court sanctified ultimately the month. All the people responded after him. It's sanctified because the witnesses, they were important. So the court got up and said, listen, my friends, thank you for coming. All your testimony is important. Because of your testimony, we're going to establish the month. The month established, and they will all say, Amen. Beautiful. And the party was over. So that's the way it was done. That's the way it was done. So ultimately, what proclaimed the month was the court's proclamation of the month. The court proclaiming the month. Like Moshe Rabbeinu proclaimed the month. God said to Moshe Rabbeinu, when you see it like this, you're going to proclaim the month. So too went in history that it was always the proclamation of the court to proclaim the month. And the court would proclaim the month. That was the system. So self-understood, if you have such a system that's based on calculation of man, always can be a mistake. There always can be a mistake in the calculation, right? There always can be a mistake. Bezdin can make a mistake too, because it's human calculation. The Shabbos, you cannot have a mistake. Shabbos, God established Shabbos. But if we're going to the sun, we're going to the moon, calculation of man, and even the calculation of Bezdin and people's watch seeing something, We always can make a mistake. For example, even a human mistake, a human error, you can imagine if every the 30th of the month, for 5 months, it would be, imagine in Israel, for the 29th to the 30th of the month, it would be totally cloudy. What would so now it's 5 months, 3-4 months down the road. Right? There's no witnesses. There can't be any witnesses to the situation. You're going total on calculation of the, right? We have to go totally on calculation of the Bezdin, on the court's calculation, because nobody can see the it's cloudy. Now you have it 3 or 4 months like that way, you can roll into a bigger problem. We can be like if they made a mistake, if the calculation is wrong for whatever reason, they don't have computers doing all the calculation in their mind, right? Ultimately, we can have a mistake. And if it's 3-4 months mistake, we can have a big mistake. Right? We can have a big mistake. We can be 4 days, 5 days off kilter when the real situation, when the real month is. So if 1 month's a mistake, we're one day off. So next month, then we make another mistake. Next month, it could be 2 days off. It could be 3 days off. Imagine it could be some situation. There could be a situation. Hypothetically, could be. If it ever happened, no. But hypothetically, it could be a problem. Could be a situation. Therefore, halacha talks about we could have a mistake. Bezdin could make a mistake. That doesn't make a difference. There's 70 rabbis. They could have made a mistake. If Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't figure it out, so these 70 rabbis could have had a mistake. What would happen if there would be a mistake? What would happen in Jewish law if there would be a mistake? And let's say the people did realize, wait, the Bezdin made a mistake. Their calculation was wrong. What would be then? They already established it. No, but already it's too late already. We established the month. Now the clouds moved away. We're ready in the middle of the month. This whole thing is, as I said, what would happen if it would be 3 months? It would be 2-3 months that it will be totally, and now we realize, boom, they made a mistake. Because it's only human. Humans make errors, and they made a mistake. What would be then? How would halacha deal with the Bezdin's mistake? The calculation of a month. How would the Torah look at that? What do we do? What do we do in that situation? So therefore, look in text number 4a, we find an interesting law. So the Rambam, Jewish law, deals with this problem because human error is human error. We're not going to blame the Bezdin. They made a mistake. They made a mistake. It's based on a calculation. It's a hard calculation, and they made a calculated mistake. So the Rambam writes, the Jewish law, even if the court and the entire Jewish people saw the moon, but the court did not declare it sanctified before the night will be in the 31st day, or if the witnesses were cross-examined, but afterward the court was unable to declare it as sanctified, before the nightfall of the 30th day, it should be sanctified, should not be sanctified. And the month should not be full. Despite the fact that the moon was sighted on the 30th night. It is the 31st day that will be the Chedesh. For the sanctification of the new moon is not established by the sighting of the moon, but by the court declaring it as sanctified. Since there's no 31 days, there's only 30 days. So if the court did not sanctify, it doesn't make a difference. So Chedesh will be the 31st day, not 31st day, the first day of the next month. As I said, if it's 30 days, then the first day of the next month is the Chedesh. So the 30 day will not be in those days, today, the 30th and the 1st of next month. In those days, if they wouldn't sanctify the 30th day, so then the last month had 30 days, but the 30th day was not a Chedesh, they didn't sanctify it. It wouldn't happen today. So the first day of the next month would be the Chedesh, it's automatic. What happens? What happens if they did sanctify the 30th day? And then they realized they made a mistake, that it should have been it shouldn't have been the 30th day. That the Chedesh should have been the first of the next month. They made a mistake. Once the court sanctified a new month, it remains sanctified regardless of whatever they erred unwillingly. They are led astray by false witnesses, or they were forced to sanctify whatever reason. we are required to calculate the dates of the festival based on the day that they sanctified it at the beginning of the new month. This is a big difference. So if they sanctified it on the 30th day, that means they consider the 30th day as Rosh Chodesh. So now, in those days, when they sanctify the moon, it's going to be that Pesach is going to be on the 15th of that month, even though they made a mistake, and we all know they made a mistake. And it's supposed to be the next day. So Jewish law says if the Bezdin made a mistake, and they know they made a mistake, and we all know they made a mistake, but they sanctified it, that's what's going to be. So that means even though we know they made a mistake, Pesach, and concerning Pesach of that year, is going to be the day that they made it, the day that they made the Rosh Chodesh, even though we know they made a mistake. Now you have to really ask the question: why did Torah start off with this law? Right? Because as you see, it's not an easy law. So it's a very interesting law that we're picking out of all the laws of the Torah to start the Torah with this law, Kiddush HaChodesh, that could be made a mistake, that could be aired by the court, could be making a mistake because it's based on citing of witnesses and on knowing astronomy, knowing the times, which both of them are not so simple, right? Because a simple person seeing the birth of the moon, he doesn't know what he's looking at. So he knows he's been told to come to court if he saw the beginning of the moon. What did you see exactly? What did you see exactly? Does anybody know over here what means the birth of the moon? How is the moon supposed to look when the birth of the moon is? How does that mean? Well, so how big the sliver has to be? How big the sliver has to be? What is this called a sliver? What is considered the birth of the moon? So what's noticeable? That's what they asked you. What exactly did you see? What exactly did you say? What did you see exactly? What did you see? Did you see anything? So it's not such a buster thing to see. Not such a simple thing to see to begin with.
Actually, in 2 days to decide whether it's waning or waxing.
So Rabbi,
Yep.
you had said that Hillel II made the official calendar. Does the official calendar, then it doesn't really always coincide with the real way the moon is supposed to look?
Right, correct. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Okay.
Maybe not.
So it's a general.
It's very interesting. That's you'll see. There's a very interesting concept over here. Very interesting concept in this law. This law has, in essence, this law has the way it is practically, and it has the way it is spiritually.
Mhm. Okay.
So that's the beauty of this law. This law might be calculation is one way, but in reality, it's a different way. That's the difference between the court and the guy who sees it, right? The court knows the time of the birth of the moon, but they're still waiting for the schleppers to come and say, who are coming for a good lunch, to come and say that how they saw the beginning of the moon. Right? What do you mean? I have to wait for some guy to tell me that, he doesn't know what he's talking about to begin with, maybe. So, but no, the Torah says you got to have the guy to come and say, I saw the moon in this way. I'm going to sit and talk to him. Can you imagine these 70 rabbis sitting and talking to these guys? Okay, how'd you see the moon? Were you sleeping? Were you daydreaming? Or did you see something? Did you do you know what you're talking about? And what did you exactly see? I don't know. Okay, go, continue, have lunch. Next, guys. Come, let's hear what you have to say. Oh, we saw something. We think we saw something. Maybe we saw something, etc. Whatever. But there is a practical, and there is a theoretical, there's a philosophical, there is a practical way of seeing something. And there is a theoretical way of seeing through astronomy, through numbers, through a concept of a theory that when the moon should be calculated. So Moshe Rabbeinu also was given both of these concepts. Moshe Rabbeinu was told calculation how the moon comes, and then the Abishur showed him exactly when you see the moon exactly like this, That's just a question. How, even Rashi says, how did God show him exactly? Right? So God showed us he had to be in the mid, it had to be Bein Arbaim. If you remember the Chitas, it says that Rashi says that it had to be in the evening when he was having this conversation. According to some, he picked them up above the world, and he showed him exactly how the moon looks in the birth of the moon. So there's a very practical way to know exactly how the moon looks. Yes? Very good question. We're going to get to the lesson. That's the most important part of the class. What's the lesson? What is that? Because it must be, if this is the first mitzvah, there must be a lesson to all mitzvahs, in essence. This is the first mitzvah, and it really, Rashi says the whole Torah should start off with this. That means that this is a very important lesson. And this is a very important lesson. I'm almost done. Okay, don't worry. I'm going to have you out of here. So, why would we follow the court? The court made a mistake. And the court knows it made a mistake unwillingly, unintentionally. Why would you follow the court? Because Torah says, once the court establishes the month, that's it. That's it. The court established the month based on their calculation. Once the court established the month, that's it. It's sanctified. The month is sanctified. Even though everybody knows they made a mistake. It's an interesting law. Even though everybody knows they made a mistake. Nevertheless, it's established and done. It's finished. Can't change what they established. So the one Maimonides writes and says, the one who commanded us to preserve the festival is the one who commanded us to rely on them. The same one who said when we should do the festival said we should rely on the court when they sanctified the month. So since you rely on them, since you rely on God, God says you got to rely on the court. The court established the month, it's established. In essence, the Eibishter, that's the expression of Gemara. The angels come to God and say, when is Pesach? And God says, I don't know when Pesach is. You have to wait for when the court establishes the month, and then you'll know when Pesach is. So we cannot establish the month. We cannot establish when Pesach is yet. We have to wait. So to say, God says, I have to wait till the court establishes the month. And even if the court's going to make a mistake, that's whenever the court establishes the month. That's about. Again, I don't know if the court ever made a mistake. That's not the point of the class. The point of the class is the court could have made a mistake, and nevertheless, it would be such established in the month. So why is that way? Why is that? I can think about it. Why is that? Why did God? It would make much more sense if I was God to go to the sun. Everything is makes sense. Everything is always the same and finished, right? No, the Abish decides to go to the moon where everything comes complicated. And now you have to have witnesses, you have to the court, blah, 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 all these problems. Why? You bring a problem, you bring a problem into the situation. So the Rebbe answered it as follows. Because everything in life is not so simple. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. The question, there's an argument in the Gemara, text number 5. There's an argument in the Gemara. When is the new year? When is the new year? Right? Normally you would say if Nisan is the new month, right? Is the first of the month, then that's the new year, right? Correct? Are you with me? Right? If Nisan is the first month in the calendar, then Nisan is the first month of the year. Right? So that would make sense. That would make sense, right? So then it means that God created the world in the month of Nisan. But we don't celebrate New Year's in the month of Nisan. We celebrate in Tishrei. Because God created the world in the month of Tishrei. So we have an argument in the Gemara. Rabbi said, "B'Tishrei nivra elam." The Rabbi says, in the month of Tishrei the world was created. Rabbi Yeshua said, "B'Nisan nivra elam." The world was created in the month of Nisan. Now none of us was there, so we don't. Okay, so when, right? So when was the world created? Was the world created in the month of Tishrei? Or the world was created in the month of Nisan? When was the world created? So how can you have such an argument? How can these two sages have such an argument? How do you argue on a Metzias? How do you argue on a fact? Either the world was created in Tishrei or the world was created in this. It can't be both. So if you cannot argue on a Metzias. In some Metzias means you can't argue on a philosophy. You can't argue on a fact. Either it's this or that. It can't be both. If the world was created in Tishrei, it can't be Nisan. If the world was created in Nisan, it can't be Tishrei. So how can you have such an argument? Let's ask God and finish, end the conversation. So how do you put these two rabbis together and say that their argument makes sense? So therefore, the Gemara says, Tosfos in that Gemara, Amar Rabbeinu Tam, Elu Divlakim Chaim. Both of these rabbis are right. How can both of these rabbis be right? In the month of Nisan, it came in God's thought of creation. Ultimately created on the month of Tishrei. He pondered it. Nisan, Ir, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, and 25th of Elul, he did it. Right? You also say that in normal ways of life. You say, when was this company established? Oh, the company was established years ago. But when did we incorporate it? It was this year. Right? Yeah, you have a shidduch. Oh, we know each other for 10 years. When we got married, what are you talking about? We know each other when we got married. So we were dating for 10 years. We were sweethearts in high school. Ultimately, we didn't get married until we were out of college. So
we are just like Hashem. He procrastinates.
Right?
We all procrastinate. We think about it all the time.
So there's a concept of the way God created the world in thought, and there's a concept that God created the world in action. So both rabbis are right. Rabbi Eliezer is talking about the practical side. Rabbi Yeshua is talking about the theoretical side, the spiritual side. This is an important argument because, in essence, ultimately, the Jewish people go out in the month of Nisan. Redemption is in the month of Nisan, not in the month of Tishrei. Right? Redemption starts off in the month of Tishrei, in the month of Nisan. The creation of the Jewish nation is the month of Nisan. It's all the month of Nisan. This mitzvah is in the month of Nisan. Right? In the month of Nisan. The month of Tishrei, and it's called the first month of the calendar. In the calendar, it's the first month. So, David created the world in the month of Tishrei. But when he wanted the concept of redemption, he chose the month of Nisan. So we have these two concepts. In essence, we have these two concepts of Torah. The concept of a reality, when something is a reality, and then we have something is in thought. Not a reality, but something is in thought. So that's why when you go to the first verse of the Torah, creation of the world, right? Bereshis bara Elokim. That's the creation of the Torah. Right? Bereshis. Right away, you'll understand now why the first Rashi in Bereshis, Rashi says, this verse demands explanation. Bereshis. This verse demands explanation. Text number 7. Bereshis bara. In the beginning, God created. This verse calls for medrashic interpretation. As our rabbi stated, God created the world for the sake of the Torah, which is called Reishis, in the beginning of his ways, and for the sake of Israel, which is called the Reishis in the beginning of your grain. So the Rashi says, right when you open up the pasuk, Bereishis means the creation of the world in the month of Tishrei, but right away the verse demands explanation because it was all created for Parshas Boy. It was all created for the portion of Boy. It was all created for the Jewish people and the Torah, which all starts off in Parshas Boy. That was the real thought. In Chassidus, what means thought? What means pondering? What means God's thought? What does that mean? God's thought? No, it means God's purpose. The purpose of creation. So in essence, there's the reality of creation and there's the purpose of creation. So Rashi, right in the beginning of creation, says, oh, we're talking about creation, how God created the world. No. Bereshis, right in the beginning of creation, reality of creation, the Torah right away says it's because of the purpose of creation that God created the world. Don't get lost in reality. Get more lost in the purpose of creation. What's the purpose of creation? Is the Torah. What's the purpose of the Torah? Is the Jewish people doing the Torah. So that's really the purpose of creation. When did that happen? Parshas Bo, this week's portion. Which is symbolic of those two concepts. The reality and the purpose of sanctifying them. The reality and the philosophy, the purpose of what it means. Are you with me? So that's the concept which Siddiq explains, the body and the soul.
Achieving physicality.
What's the purpose of physicality? What's the purpose of physicality? Why do we need physicality? Why does God need to create the world? So therefore, the Rebbe says in text number 8, underlining thought behind something is the internal dimension, the goal, the purpose of the action that actually turns the thought into a reality. It emerges that the physical creation in Tishrei represents the external dimension of creation, while Nisan marks the inner dimension of creation. That's why the next Rashi in the beginning of the Torah says, Bereshis, Amar Rav Yitzchak, right away. Rashi says, Amar Rav Yitzchak. That's why, again, the Rashi, we mentioned this Rashi many times. We'll mention it again. That's why Rashi, in the first Rashi of the Torah, Rashi right away says, in the beginning, Rav Yitzchak said it was not necessary to begin the Torah except from this month is to you. Rashi right away says in the beginning, why does the Torah talk about this creation? What does it make a difference? Creation to us, which is the first commandment. Really, the Torah should have started off in Parshas Bo, this week's portion, which commanded Israel to command is. Now, what reason did he commence with the beginning? Because the verse, to strengthen his works, he related to his people, to give them an inheritance of nations. That's it. The importance was Eretz Yisrael. We will be able to take reality into a whole different dimension. You'll be able to inherit the land, inheritance of lands, inheritance of nations. That is really the whole purpose of Yiddishkeit, of Torah, is all about taking the reality and changing that reality. Not maybe changing it, bringing it its true purpose in the inheritance of nations. For that the nations of the world will say to Israel, you are robbers, for you are conquered by force the land of the 7 nations of Canaan. They will reply, the entire earth belongs to God. That's the whole purpose that God created the world. We didn't do nothing with us accomplishing God's purpose of creation. And Taka, God gave it to you, but the Abishta gave it to you because he wanted to ultimately give it to us. And that's the purpose of creation. Go to God. If you have any complaints, go to the one who created the world, who gave the purpose of creation. So you're right. God created the world, and when he created the world, he gave it to the nations. But that was not his purpose. His ultimate purpose was to give it to the Jewish nation. And that's, we're accomplishing the purpose of creation. So we're not stealing anything. That was the purpose. So maybe in your eyes, it looks like you're stealing something. But in reality, it's not stealing because that was the purpose of why God created the world. And that is, he created this, we learned the story of creation. He gave it to whoever he deems proper. When he wished, he gave it to them. And he wished, he took it for them and gave it to us. And that is the way you need to answer the world. And that's why, in essence, he says, I tell the world that there are 2 purposes. There's a reality and there is the purpose of creation. There's the creation of the world and the reality, where God created the world. And you're right, David created the world, and for thousands of years he gave it to the nations of the world in this land. But ultimately, when David created the world, he had that purpose that he would give it ultimately to the Jewish nation. For that reason, you understand why God created the world. When would the Jewish nation come into existence? Even if you want to start the existence from Abraham, which is 1948 of creation. 48 in creation. It's a good number. 1948 in creation. 2,000 years later. So that's what the Kabbalah says. It's 2,000 years of world. And then starts 2,000 years of Torah. Avram Avinu starts 2,000 years of Torah. Now we're in 2,000 years of exile. But, so 2,000 years of world. It means the Eibishter created a world. Reality. And what that reality meant. It was a chaotic reality. Because there was no purpose. There was nobody to bring the purpose of the world until Avram Avinu brought about the purpose in the world. And ultimately, Moshe Rabbeinu revealing the Torah to the world, which is the true purpose, the blueprint of the world. And let's see the way the Zohar expresses the meaning of the Torah. It's very powerful. Look at the Zohar in text number 10. The Zohar says, anyone who looks into the Torah and toils in it is considered to uphold the world's existence. Because the Torah is the true existence of the world. It's the purpose of the world. Just as God looked into the Torah and created the world, a person who looks into the Torah upholds the world. Right? So you have a different expression in Pirkei Avos. There are three pillars the world stands: ala Torah, vala avoda, val gemilas hasadam, and the learning of Torah, service of the heart, and acts of kindness. So Torah is a pillar of the world. It's not dust. It's not like a regular blueprint. We say the Torah is a blueprint of the world. But ultimately, once you build a building with a blueprint, you don't need the blueprint anymore. We keep the blueprints because whatever. A guy came here a couple of days ago and said, I want to see a blueprint. Yeah, read it. Any layman doesn't understand what these blueprints are. It's very difficult. So maybe one day you might have to have an architect come and look at the blueprints. But once the building is built, I don't need any blueprints anymore. The building is here. Torah is called the blueprints of the world, but actually Torah is the purpose of the world. It's not like blueprints that you don't need once the building is built. This is a blueprint that continuously gives existence to this world. Because without the Torah, you don't have a purpose of the existence of the world. You have a reality, you don't have the purpose of this reality. If you don't have the purpose of this reality, there's no need for the world. That's why, again, Bereshis, Rashi says right away that this means the Torah come to tell us that the whole purpose of the world was because of the Torah and the Jew that learns the Torah. So that's the power of learning Torah. You should realize the power of learning Torah. That by us learning now Torah, we give existence to the world. We give the purpose of existence to this world. And therefore, if you look at text number 11, it says, Menachem Arazaya said, the Torah speaks primarily in the spiritual realms and alludes secondarily to the lower realms. That means there's a whole purpose, there's a whole upper world, there's a reality, and there's a whole spiritual dimension to it. The reality might be different than the spiritual dimension. The real trick is to bring them both together. So let's look at the Rebbe says. Okay, let's go back to the law of the moon. Ready? This is the lesson. The sun and the moon, in a physical sense, like everything else physical, results from a spiritual version of the sun and the moon above. The fact that we mark the day of a new moon as a Chodesh, then is primarily associated with a spiritual new moon. So when the Bezdin said this is a Chodesh, they might have made a mistake in reality, but they didn't make a mistake in spirituality. God agrees with their statement. However, in so much as our awareness of the spiritual matters is through their physical representation down here, the Torah instructs us to set their Chodesh according to the parameters of the physical new moon, either by sighting or by calculation, because that's what tells us when the spiritual new moon occurs. Text number 12b, however, when the court sets their Chodesh on a different day, in which case the Torah tells us to nevertheless rely upon them. They made a mistake in reality. They made a mistake. What happens in reality? They made a mistake. The Abish says to calculate the moon according to reality. What happens if in reality they made a mistake? It itself proves that it's on that day, which the Torah is truthful, determines to be the Chodesh when the primary new moon occurs above. So they might have made a mistake in reality, but the God says, no, that's the day that the Bezdin decides, I'm going to make it a Chodesh, even though in reality, it's not. But I'm going to make it because in spirituality is the Bezdin made it that day. As for the fact that the new moon takes a place on a different day, that's because in this world, on various reasons, does not fit the flow of the moon above to be expressed in the moon below at the same time.
It's great.
So that's why if the Bezdin establishes the moon on a day before, when in reality is, the Abisha says, since in spirituality, the Bezdin established the moon, according to their understanding, on this day, that's going to be the Chodesh, even though in the reality it's not. Because the spirituality, it is.
And this is the beginning of the.
My friends, this is the lesson that Ebba wants to teach us. We need to bring the spiritual, the physical together. But when they don't, for whatever reason, come together, then the spiritual is the reality. Because that's the purpose of creation. That's the true purpose. Let me just finish my thought. That's the true purpose of creation. And we never can leave the true purpose of creation to what we think reality is. So whatever reason, if our reality, really the ultimate aspect is to bring the reality and the purpose of reality, God's purpose to come together as one. If for whatever reason, our reality doesn't fit God's reality, we should always go with God's reality, because that is the purpose of ultimately our reality. And where do we learn that all from? This law, specifically this law, where the Bezdin can make a mistake, because they're going on their calculation and on people's sight, where there can be a mistake, and we know it's a mistake, still, we're going to keep the day that they sanctified, even though they made a mistake. So that's why this mitzvah is the beginning of all mitzvahs, that we should realize, my friends, that in this situation of life, there is the reality that Torah says is a reality. And there's the purpose in everything in life. There is the background. There is the spiritual dimension. Hopefully, the physical and the spiritual never come into conflict. That should be the way it should be. It should work out perfectly, right? So that everybody should do what they're supposed to do and everything works out, and my physical world and my spiritual dimension is working in unison. What happens if it doesn't? What happens if the physical world, my reality, my physical reality, is in contrast, conflict with my spiritual the reality, my spiritual dimension. Then go with the purpose. Go with the purpose. Go with the purpose of creation. Go with the mitzvah. Go with the mitzvah. Go with the Torah. Because the Torah is ultimately the purpose of the world. The Torah will ultimately bring about the spirit's physical reality. Ultimately, you'll realize that the spiritual reality is the physical reality. At this present time, I always go with the spiritual purpose. And if I have that, and I have that foundation, in essence, if I have that foundation, then I can accept myself the Torah. Then I can go to the next week's portion, the following portion, the giving of the Torah, where the Torah demands on me certain things in a physical reality, and I follow that Torah obligation. Why? Because I realize that even though I don't see the physical reality connected to the spiritual reality, but I realize that the whole Torah has its physical reality and has its spiritual dimension. It has its Tishrei, which is the way God created the world, and it has its Nisan, where God is the purpose, the thought, and the reason why He created the world.
Only Hashem knows the ultimate emes of everything.
No, He gave us a Torah. He gave us a Torah. He gave us the blueprint. In essence, He gave us the and now you have to accept. You cannot misinterpret the Torah. No, you cannot misinterpret the Torah. You have to be crazy to be dumb to misinterpret. Everything is printed now. You have in English, Spanish, Japanese, any language you want. It's very clear. The laws of the Torah. It's not impossible. It's not possible to make a mistake in the law of the Torah, because that's printed as well. It is possible to make a mistake in the philosophical part of the Torah. Right, but I'm not telling you what the Torah wants you. What you need to do is clear as day. Nobody can say I made a mistake in the law of the Torah. That means you didn't make a mistake. You didn't learn. You didn't open up the Shulchan Aruch. You didn't open up the Code of Jewish Law, and you never learned it. And if you never learned it, so it's ignorance. It's not a mistake out of ignorance of not learning. And we can make mistakes out of ignorance. That's not a problem. But that's an honest evaluation. It's not a mistake out of, I don't understand what the Torah said. It's a mistake basically you didn't never learn. And we never learned a lot of things. The learning never ends. So we never learned a lot of things in the Torah. But we cannot make such a mistake. We shouldn't make such mistakes, right? You should never make a mistake again, right? You always let to make a mistake one time. If you make a mistake again on the same thing, then you're a fool. Right? Then you're a fool. You the first time you made a mistake is possible. To make the mistake again, that's not possible. That's impossible. You should have learned from your mistake the first time. But that's not the point of the Sikha. The point is a very deep point. I hope you understand. I hope I expressed it right. The point of the Sikha is that Rebbe, in essence, saying that the Torah wanted to bring about, to teach us this law, that we should understand that the rest of the whole Torah is going to be this struggle. The struggle between the purpose of the mitzvah and the mitzvah. That's the problem. We don't do the mitzvah because we don't realize the purpose in the mitzvah. We think the mitzvah is just in its reality. But really, there's a purpose in the mitzvah. That's why, in essence, the first law of Torah is a concept where the court realized they made a mistake, but really they didn't. Because God says your mistake that was the purpose. So you thought you made a mistake, but since you sanctified it, then that's its spiritual purpose. And therefore, it's going to become a physical reality that Pesach is going to become a day earlier because you made a mistake. Because really, you didn't make a mistake. How is it possible that you made a mistake? The Bezin would make such a mistake. They couldn't make such a mistake because in the spiritual sense, they probably didn't make the mistake. And therefore, we're going to keep it because it's really not a mistake. That's really the deep thing of this concept.
Say it, Marshall.
I have two.
Yeah.
One is that this is why Hashem put the sun and the moon totally out of whack. Like it's not an exact science.
Right.
And it doesn't land. The solar calendar is not related at all.
Right.
It comes out to these weird calculations. But also, there's a story, this whole thing mirrors this thing, I don't know where it's in the Gemara or something, where they were arguing about an oven, and one rabbi said something, and another rabbi said something else, and and then he said,
Right, let the voice of heaven.
and
Right.
trees gonna go flying, and the river will turn backwards, and all these things happened. Isn't this proving there's a line in Deuteronomy? I'm just thinking out loud. I'm sorry.
I know, but you have to realize people are on the thing over here and they don't hear you. So you gotta ask the question.
So doesn't it mirror that whole story? And the point is that Deuteronomy says that if there's a question, follow the sages of the time.
Okay, fine. You could.
Isn't that
I
the
think
conclusion of the
you
whole
can. I
story?
think you can learn a lot of things from this. I think you can learn a lot of things from this. You can learn that aspect from it. You can learn many things from this aspect. Because in essence, we need to look at everything that we do in life as its physical side and as a spiritual side. Not always do they mirror one another. Not always do the spiritual and the physical mirror one another. Sometimes the spiritual can be greater than the physical. Sometimes the physical can be greater than the spiritual. And not always do they sync. And we should try to sync them both together, the spiritual and the physical, to bring them together as one. But it doesn't make a difference. Ultimately, as long as you did the mitzvah and you had its purpose, you had some of its purpose involved, then it will ultimately work together. Will ultimately come together. But if I do that's the physical part of the mitzvah and I don't have any purpose in it, I'm missing, in essence, something in this mitzvah. Okay, but there's many things you can learn from this. Just the Rebbe wants to ask us, express, why would the Torah pick this as its first mitzvah? This foundation as its first mitzvah. That even Rashi, in the beginning of the book of Genesis, would say, really, we should start the whole Torah with this mitzvah, which is an interesting mitzvah. Because this mitzvah, in essence, shows these two things in a very open way. That there is the reality of the mitzvah, and there is the philosophical spirituality behind this mitzvah. There's the reality when the moon is created, because that there's a certain way, and then there's the concept of Kiddush HaChay, sanctifying the moon, that the Bezin sanctifies the moon. That might not work out in Jewish law in a realistic way, but the Bezin could have made a mistake, and we're still going to keep the sanctification of the moon. Because the Torah says that when Bezin sanctifies the moon, we're going to accept that sanctification, even though in reality it's not going to fit per se in a realistic way. Because they did it to sanctify God's name. And that is the whole purpose of the mitzvah, is to sanctify God's name. And therefore, that alone is the power of the mitzvah, and it'll create the reality. So, that's why you can have two rabbis who argue, when was the world created? Was the world created in the month of Nisan? Or the world was created in the month of Tishrei? So in essence, Rabbi Yeshua, who says the world was created in the month of Nisan, because since the purpose is the month of Nisan, then that's when the world was created. So the truth is, Rabbi Yitzchak says the whole Torah should have started off in this week's portion, because that's when the world was created. When the purpose of existence came into the world, that's when really the world was created. So why are you starting off with the patriarchs and the matriarchs? Why would go when the purpose of the world was created? And God says that's fine, that's correct, because the purpose of creation happened in this week's portion. But I have a reality too. By me, both of them are important. The reality and the purpose are both important.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So does this, when you talk about the physical mitzvah and the purpose and everything, so does this extend, like, Shem says no cheeseburgers for you. Okay, got it. But what about like, does it extend to, let's say, hashkafa? Let's say a person, for example, let's say goes to a doctor and the doctor, says something and they feel very disheartened from it. So the Torah says that, you're not allowed to give up, even if there's a sword at your neck and all of that. Is that part of what you're talking about here, or is that just
Yeah,
like a whole
the Torah
nother
says
realm?
follow the doctor. Even though the doctor can make a mistake, follow the doctor.
And what about one's attitude?
Because I will give the bracha, I'll give the bracha through the doctor. So even if the doctor makes a mistake, I will give the bracha through the doctor, because the doctor is the vessel that I want to use. So therefore, the reality is you have to follow the doctor, but the purpose is the purpose happens through the doctor. So the Abish doesn't need a doctor. He can send you healing without the doctor. But the Abish says, I want you to follow the doctor. And I want you to do, it's actually, you just mentioned that because the video on Motzei Shabbos was that video. The Rebbe said you have to follow a doctor. The doctor's a human being. He can make a mistake. So the Abish said, why should I go to a doctor? I should go to God. God doesn't make any mistakes. But the Abish says, no, follow the doctor, because that's the reality. But realize that when you follow the doctor, you really is accomplishing, your healing is coming through me, not through the doctor. But the doctor is only the physical, the reality that I work through. But ultimately, healing comes through me. So therefore, you have to go to the doctor. The doctor is obligated to heal you. He has that mitzvah to heal you. And if everybody does what they're supposed to do, then the Eibishter works through that avenue. But ultimately, it's the Eibishter that does all the healing, and the Eibishter accomplishes all what needs to be accomplished. But you need to go to the...
Rabbi, I have a
Let's say the
question.
doctor-
What?
Can I just refinish?
Yeah.
Let's say the doctor, you go to the doctor, okay? So Shem says, go to the doctor. You go to the doctor, he gives you instructions. But let's say he says to you, I'm sure a lot of people hear these kinds of things, like, okay, we'll do this and this, but I don't really think it's going to help, but we'll do it. And then you feel like,
That's when you got to get another doctor. That's when you got to get another doctor, because he's not allowed to say that. Then he's becoming the Eibishter. He's not allowed to say that. The doctor can say, listen, you're very sick, and I'm going to try whatever I could. But he cannot say I can't help you, or you cannot be helped. That's when you have to get another doctor. The obligation of the doctor is try to give you help in any kind of way he could.
But usually the way it works out for a lot of people I know is that they go to the doctor does a million things, takes a million tests, doesn't really give a definitive answer. Either they're afraid they're going to get sued, or they just don't know. Who really knows?
Doctor
And
has
the
to do
person
whatever
goes
he can.
around and around, and then the patient ends up feeling like, like I just want to give
Because
up.
the doctor,
you know?
because the doctor needs to tell the patient, I'm doing my best. I think this is going to help. But the doctor, like you said before, the doctor's not acting like a doctor. So the doctor's saying, I don't know, I can't help you. And that already gives the patient, that it cannot be helped. The doctor needs to always say, I'm here to help you. I'm going to try my best to help you.
Right.
And the Eibishter will do the rest. I'm only I'm only a messenger of God. I'm doing my best. The healing needs to come through God. I'm going to do my best. And the Eibishter hopefully will be, and I'll be the right messenger of God to give you healing. But the Eibishter is the one who heals.
So like that's one example, but I guess my question is sort of whenever we run into situations, I was looking for an example, but we run into situations where on the outside of it leads people to feel discouraged or despair or like things won't get better or what. Let's say a person doesn't have a shidduch, and then people don't, whatever. It could be a million different things, but
again,
I guess what
a
I'm
person
asking
should
you is the
never, ever,
hashkafa.
there's an expression, Harbe shluchim lamokoim. There are many messengers to God. And there's not one doctor, there's not one girl or man out there. You have to keep on trucking. You have to not be despair. If one doctor doesn't help you, there's another doctor. If one shidduch doesn't work, there's another shidduch. There's habits that when you get despair, that's your problem, not God's problem. God wants you to keep on going and keep on trying. The second you stop trying, that's your problem. The second the doctor stops trying, that's a doctor's problem. Has nothing to do with God. God has many messengers. And therefore, the Eibishter can accomplish it through many people, not through one person, not through one shidduch, not through that you get the spirit that's not God's problem. The Eibishter has somebody for everybody, and therefore a person has to keep on trying to find a shidduch. The Eibishter has healing in the world through many doctors. If it's not this doctor, it's another doctor. Don't give up. That's it. That's your obligation, never to give up. And Amir Hashem, the Eibishter will fulfill what he needs to accomplish and give you. That's the spiritual side and the physical side. The physical side always can be despairing, because always doctors make mistakes and things don't work out always. But there's always a spiritual side, and the spiritual side is ultimately the one that creates the whole reality. It's not the physical. The physical side is a conduit. It's only the avenue. It's the shliach. It's not the essence. That's the way the Torah wanted to accomplish it. That's why the Torah picked this mitzvah, to show you that even if physically you're going to make a mistake, it's not made a mistake, because the spiritual, that's the way it's supposed to be. And that's the way it has to be, and that's the way ultimately it's going to happen. So therefore, the physical is only a conduit, it's only a messenger. And the harbe shluch l'makom, the messengers to God. A person has to keep on trying. Never, ever give up. Because in the spiritual, the Eibush is always going to want it to happen. So therefore, the Rebbe would always say, doctor, your obligation is to heal. Doesn't say your obligation to say there's no healing. You can't do it. Tell them to go to another doctor. That's the problem when doctors say, I'm the end, and that's it. No, there's other doctors. There's other doctors in the world. Baruch Hashem. There's many doctors in this world. And you always go to another doctor. And Baruch Hashem, a doctor that has a positive attitude. I once met a Jew in Israel. He told me, I can tell you a story of the Rebbe. I once went to a doctor, and the doctor told me, I have and you're at the end of the road. You have no health. I cannot help. You're dying. You're gonna die. So I went to the Rebbe. I wrote to the Rebbe. This doctor told me I'm gonna die. Well, a blessing. I need a blessing. So like an hour later, I got a call from the doctor. Says, no, I think I might have a medication for you. Come back to the office. I'm giving you medication. And he gave me the medication. And look at that, I'm here. So the doctor told me later, he says, the truth is that I got a call from the Rebbe's office. The Lubavitch Rebbe's office called me and said to me, what are you telling a person that he's going to die? How are you telling a person he's going to die? You can't do that to a person. You can't do that. So what should I do? I don't have medication. He says, go and buy a rock candy and break it up and give it to him. You don't tell a person he's going to die. You give him whatever, give him hope. So that's what I did. So actually, the truth is, your medication was rock candy and it saved you. Your medication was not rock candy. Your medication was the bracha of the Rebbe who gave you more life. And that's it. So that was the miracle. The Rebbe gave you, the Eibishter gave you more life. It happened through rock candy. Actually, your bracha came through rock candy. So it was rock candy. And that was the bracha. And that's the bracha there. That's a bracha.
Rabbi, I wanna piggyback on what Jean said. So you answered my question, and I had the same